Welcome to this information session for Genomic Medicine at Imperial College London. This is information on our Genomic Medicine MSc program, which also includes a PG Cert and a postgraduate diploma as well. I'm Mike Lovett, I'm the program director. Also online here are Eleanor Walsh and Emily Pine. Can you introduce yourselves? Just say hi.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Emily Pine. I'm the senior teaching fellow that works on the MSc Genomic Medicine program.
Hello, everyone. I'm Eleanor Walsh. I'm the education administrator, so I help with queries and sort of onboarding students with admissions at the first point.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. We're just going to go through a few informational slides, and then we'll take your questions and give as much information as we possibly can. So let's go to the next slide. Now, there's two senior teaching fellows listed here because Dr. Laura Colopy is currently on maternity leave, but will be returning in the middle of the year. So if you did apply to our program, you will see both of these very talented senior teaching fellows who are involved with genomic medicine, as Dr. Emily Pine and Dr. Laura Colopy. And then the person who is the administrator is Eleanor Walsh, and I'm the program director. So that's our PGR team, PGT team for the MSc. Okay, next slide, please. So what do you get in this MSc? Well, you get interaction with world-renowned researchers, both within our institute and across the entire Imperial College and sometimes in other institutions. As you can see here in point 5, we have partnerships with the University of Surrey and the Institute of Cancer Research in London. You might see on our website it says Brunel University, but that collaboration has now been transferred with the relevant faculty to Surrey. We have teaching from experts and researchers across Imperial and including many in other institutions. This is a blended teaching format, and by that it means that there will be parts that are online, and there will be in almost every module a single week in which you're required to be there face-to-face. So there's a lot of teaching face-to-face for 1 week in a month for pretty much every module you're required to do. We do offer full-time and part-time options, and we'll come back to that in a couple of minutes. And we have a very diverse student cohort. We have people who are coming from basic research backgrounds. We have people who are coming from professional backgrounds, and by that I mean medical professionals from many medical specialities, including many physicians, nurses, midwives, all sorts of people being trained in genomic medicine. So that makes for a very diverse and interesting learning environment. We also have some people who come from a sort of finance background. So we've had several who have been venture capitalists and want to get into the funding of companies involved in genomic medicine. All right, next slide, please. So, as I said, we offer a certificate, a diploma, or the whole full force MSc. And those differ in just the numbers of modules and the inclusion of a research project. So for 4 modules, you get a postgraduate certificate. That's 4 months of work. With 8 modules, you get a postgraduate diploma. And the full MSc is the diploma plus a 3-month research project. So that actually is about 14 weeks of research in a laboratory environment. Okay, next slide, please. Right, our minimum requirement is a second-class honour, first tier in a relevant subject. In some cases, we consider those who don't meet this minimum. So if you have a 2-2 or you've been out of the scientific workforce for a while or something like that, don't be scared to apply, because we've had a lot of very interesting and very successful people who have come through those different routes. We are very much focusing upon your motivations for doing genomic medicine, and you need to clearly justify that. And we will be discussing that if you are interviewed. And we also accept a wide variety of international qualifications. So our admissions team at the college level look at that very closely and let us know if everything is up to scratch before those even hit our desk. Okay, next please. So the applications go to the Imperial College admissions system initially. So there's a standardized format, standardized forms you fill out online. And that is initially, as I said, reviewed by the admissions team, and they let us know if the requirements are met or if there are deficiencies or anything like that. And then it comes to our team and we review it. And if you're successful past those stages, you will be invited to interview, which is about a 20-minute interview, which consists of a series of reasonably standardized questions, because we're trying to keep this extremely fair, and then the discussion of a research paper, which we will forward to you. And that discussion is very important to assess your scientific understanding and a bit of critical ability. And then usually after that, we notify you within about 2 weeks. So it's a fairly streamlined process. We have about a footprint right now of maybe around about 100 people in the program, of which probably 60 or 70 are doing full-time one-year MSCs. And of those, maybe a quarter or so are medical professionals, and the vast majority are basic research scientists. Okay, next slide, please. So this is the sort of course structure, which is kind of a busy slide because it is quite a complicated structure. So if you look at the third line down, you see that there's a series of modules here: fundamentals, omics technologies, inherited diseases, and then there's splits. So there's a split in January and there's a split in March. So what you do is you have 6 taught modules, each of a month in length. And then you have 2 optional ones. So in the entire year, you would do 8 taught modules, each of a month long, and that would constitute the taught modules. And if you were going to do a diploma, it would be those 8 taught modules. So in January, you will choose between ethics and genomics in the patient. And then in March, you have 4 different modules to choose from, but you can only choose 1. So that's quite complicated, but it does give you a wide breadth of understanding in genomic medicine. So we do offer pharmacogenomics, we offer genome-based therapeutics. We have quite a wide range of interests, but then you can see the core modules listed towards the sort of left-hand side of this slide, and you have to do all of those to get the MSc. If you're doing a full-time MSc, then you will do your research project from June to September. So you'll be submitting it in September, but starting it at some point in June. So a 14-week research project at the end of the course. That's if you're doing a 1 year. Now you can do it part-time and do it over 2 years. We'll come back to that. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so module choices. As I said, there are optional modules. You can only take one of these per group, so 1 in January and 1 in March. And you're required to be, these have to be specified by the end of October, early November of your starting year. And if you're doing part-time MSc or the DIP or the certificate, you're taking the very same modules as the full-time MSc students, but you might do them in a different order. So you could do a part-time certificate, for example, and split out your 4 modules over the entire year. But you have to start with fundamentals. Everybody has to do that first module. Now, we also get frequently asked, what is self-directed learning? Well, it's a mix of many different formats. So it might be online lectures, it might be interactive courses, some research, etc., many quizzes. So usually the face-to-face part of each module is usually the second week of the month. So you have to be present for that at Imperial. And you should complete all the week 1 content in advance of that second face-to-face teaching week because you need it. And then the third week is more online learning, and the fourth week is largely devoted to doing your assessment for that module. And then you submit that assessment and you are done and dusted for that module. So you can move on to the next module, a relatively clear stress because you're starting something new. So it's not as if you have to take exams at the end of the year as you might have had to do in an undergraduate degree. You're doing this as you go. Every module is being assessed as it happens. But the great advantage of that is you are finished with it as long as you pass it. Okay, next slide, please. So the research project, we asked a lot about this. Now, the research project is a written dissertation, which counts for 80% of the mark. And then you also have to do an oral presentation at the end of it, which is only about 15 minutes or so, but it counts for 20% of your overall mark for your project. So you need to get that organized, and we will, of course, emphasize this and give you some training in that. Genomic medicine really spans many, many different fields. So it's a very broad church, and there's always a wide variety of projects. You can do wet lab projects, you can do literature reviews as long as they are substantive, not just meta-analysis. You can do dry lab projects, so bioinformatic projects. So we give you a whole range of those as possibilities, but we are not brokering your connections with particular labs, not directly at least. We give you those opportunities and you go and talk to those people and you forge a link with that research project. So we don't overtly matchmake in these, and we're not doing the paternalistic thing. You also may carry out projects with other institutions or with industry, as long as they're credible genomic medicine projects with good supervisors. And we will ask you everybody to do a project proposal, which will be required to be passed to get approval. And if you're approved at a different institution, and sometimes we've had people, have projects in the States or Canada, or even we've had one who did it in South Korea, but we've had people in Japan, Hong Kong, as you see here, and then other institutions within London, for example, the Crick Institute, the Turing Institute, King's, UCL, places like that, Oxford, Cambridge. So there's many, many opportunities. So it's not just confined within Imperial, which is a big enough place in and of itself to do genomics, but it's really the world is your oyster on this as long as it's a good project. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so as I said, students are responsible for securing their own research project, but we give you a lot of project titles that help you make those connections. So as we release a set of projects each year, which is what's happening around about now in the year, students may then contact those people, or you may even contact lecturers that you particularly like their work when they were talking about it in the course. And you then do a project proposal, which is a much more extensive description of what you're really going to do. And then once you're approved for the project, you start in June, you finish in September. And part-time students, so if you're going to do, let's say, the MSc over 2 years or something like that, then you have a much longer time to do that project. But the total commitment is 14 weeks of full time. So you can stretch your project over a year, but it would be a part-time project over that year period. It would not be every day for a year doing the project. And we develop that timeline along with you and your principal investigator, your supervisor. And then the usual timing for the oral presentations is about 2 weeks after you've written up and submitted your dissertation. So that's the sort of overall framework of it. Okay, next slide, please. Right, what are the outcomes from our program? Well, a very large number of our students go on to do PhDs. There are a large number of PhD places at Imperial. They are very competitive, but there are also many, many PhD places at very good universities within London and at Oxbridge, meaning Oxford and Cambridge, and we actively help people to try and find those places. That's no guarantee that you get into them, but we will certainly write good references for you, and it's a good program to be in, and many, many PhD programs like the mixture of computational expertise along with some wet lab experience. We've had a lot of success in our students, or rather our students have had a lot of success in getting into the scientist training program, which is a NHS funded, I believe it's NHS funded, but it's fully funded. And it is a professional scientist training program that is highly competitive. And our students come back and talk to the current cohort about how that worked and what it takes to make that transition, because it's a tough one. We have a lot of people from industry. They tend to go back to their labs and usually into a promoted position. And several of those have become real luminaries within big pharma on genomic medicine. And then we have quite a few entrepreneurs and financial people who have gone through the course, and many of them have continued within genomic medicine. And it really does help to have people who have been through that entrepreneurial mix, and they give a great perspective and great input into the course. All right, next slide, please. That is by no means all-encompassing in terms of the outcomes. Lots of people go to different places and do different things. So what about your welfare and college support? Well, there is a lot of that. You will be assigned an academic tutor who is not connected to our program, and that is your go-to person for essentially all sorts of help and advice. We also have a departmental welfare tutor. Then there are many college support mechanisms, which you see all listed here. And then there are many short courses for postgraduate students, which can be very, very helpful in terms of getting perspective, including academic English and things like that, which sounds like remedial, but it's not. They're very insightful and they're extremely helpful in terms of getting used to writing and presenting things in sensible ways using academic English. And then we have a weekly drop-in session throughout the year, which is myself and right now Emily, and will be a little later in the year, Laura. We give you academic advice. We talk to you about assessments, and we give you help in any sort of thing that is bothering you at that particular time. And we do that every Thursday afternoon. So there's a lot of interaction, even although the vast majority of students are going off and doing things online and being here for 1 week per month. There's a lot of interactions, and we really do believe in cohort building. All right, next slide, please. Here's some finance information. Now, these slides are going to be posted, so you'll be able to see these URLs later on. And you know, there is some level of postgraduate funding support. I wish it were more. We're going to come to a couple of examples, not very large, but nevertheless good examples in a moment. All right, next slide, please. So we're very pleased to announce that we award one scholarship to the Genomic Medicine program, and that will be starting this year. It is £3,000, which certainly doesn't cover your tuition fees, but it helps. And you are very welcome to apply for this. So if you are an applicant who's due to start in 2025, then you can apply for this, and this is open to both home and overseas students, and that you get £3,000 off your total course fees, which I know is not an awful lot, but it is. It helps. All right, next slide, please. And specifically for anybody applying from India, if you're domiciled in India, then the college is very pleased to enable outstanding students from India with a potential scholarship of £10,000. So if you apply to start in 2025 in genomic medicine, then you can apply for that particular scholarship. I think there's only one of these, but maybe there will be more. And you can see the conditions here that you can really, this crosses many different faculties within Imperial. So I'm sure it's going to be highly competitive, but I would encourage you to apply for this if you want to get the potential of having a scholarship. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, so scan the barcode and you'll be kept up to date with all our communications relating to our course. Next slide, please. I think that covers the overall sort of bread and butter of the genomic medicine program. We're going to talk about some health education England's specific details right now. So we'll defer questions until after I've done that. So I can't remember what they've rebranded themselves as, but HEE has designated, I think it's 7 academic institutions who are the preferred providers for genomic medicine training. So these are to provide training to healthcare professionals who want to essentially upskill and want to learn about genomics in all of its reality. So this is not meant to be superficial. This is the real hardcore stuff. And the way you get this funding is you apply in the usual manner and you apply for a postgraduate certificate. And the reason for this is that's the way that HEE gives out its money. It gives it out in 4 module increments. So they give it out in 4 modules, but once you finish a certificate with us, we will say, would you like to do the diploma? And the vast majority of people say, yes, please. And we up you to diploma. And that usually is flawless. And then once you've done the diploma, we say, would you like to do the full MSc? And again, the vast majority say, yes, please. So we have a lot of applicants coming in through this mechanism who get fully funded all the way through their MSc by HEE. So they have a set budget for this. We've had, I think, hundreds now of healthcare professionals who have come through our training program, and we keep in close touch with them, and they have become very successful within NHS because there really is a lack of deep understanding in medical education as to the complexities of genomic medicine and how it affects every kind of disease on the face of this earth. What we do is if we accept you into the program through the interview process, then once you get your offer, we help you with the HEE applications. So we liaise with HEE all the time, and then they have a whole series of forms to fill out, but it's nothing onerous. And if you've been accepted by us, we will help you on your way to get that funding. And you can see the specifics here. You can only do this if you are a home student and if you are employed by the NHS. So you have to have an actual NHS contract to be eligible for this funding. But if you have those, then please go ahead, because now is the time to apply. Our next tranche of funding will be coming through, I believe, in April. So we like to take care of those cert to diploma transitions, diplomas to MSCs, and then we take in our new cohort. So bear that in mind and don't put it off, because we would love you to get completely funded through this. I think that's everything. Is there another slide, Eleanor? No, that's it. So now we'd be happy to take your questions. And I think we can do this any old way you like. We can do it by...
Yeah.
Somebody just said something about the funding only being until March 2025. We have had an automatic extension. The HEE site may say that, but we have an extension of our funding guaranteed for the next year, I believe.
Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask, or if not, I can start running through the ones that were submitted. If you'd like to raise your hand or pop them in the chat, then please feel free. But I can start on some of the submitted ones. There's a few coming through. Someone said, I have a few questions. If I chose to do a PG dip, can I do it remotely?
No, you still have to do that 1 week of face-to-face. So we've thought about doing this as a complete, MOOC, but it just is not amenable to it. And we'd lose quite a lot of the sort of cohort identity in the program. So you do have to do that 1 week face-to-face, and that applies to any sort of format that you want to study in. So if you are thinking of doing this part-time while you're fully employed, let's say you're a GP or somebody like that, you certainly can do that, but you're going to have to get your line manager to sign off on that 1 week per month, which you're going to have to be available to come in to be of those. And a lot of those things aren't just straightforward lectures. It's not just things that could be recorded. There's an awful lot of interaction. So there's a lot of group discussions, journal clubs, things like that, which are great learning experiences.
They've also asked, I'm particularly interested in prenatal genetic counselling. How can I get exposure for getting trained in this field?
Well, we have a lot of speakers in various bits of the course about prenatal genetics, and we have a lot of contacts with Genomics England and their newborn screening, and we have a lot of contacts with hospitals like, for example, Great Ormond Street. So we would, certainly be happy to direct you to those people if you wanted to do a research project on that. But you're going to get some exposure within the course no matter what on that particular topic.
They've also asked, can I convert my capstone project to a PhD?
Meaning your MSc project, is that what you're saying? If you're meaning that, you can't double dip in that sense, but it's very frequent that people go and do an MSc project and they write that up as a dissertation, and then the supervisor in their lab may really like you and say, this has been very productive. Would you like to do a PhD in my lab? That happens a lot. And that's not exactly a conversion of the project, because it's not just enfolded into it. It just leads to it. So it's a natural progression. But you can't actually just take your project and make it a chapter in your PhD. That doesn't work.
Okay. There's still a few questions about the part-time sort of thing. So how often would face-to-face weeks be if part-time?
They'd be usually the second week of every month you were studying. So maybe, you were doing it part-time. You'd do fundamentals. You'd have to be in Imperial for the second week of fundamentals. And then you might skip the next module and do another module. You'd have to be there for that next week. Now, the second week of the next month. We plan this out well in advance so that we can give you that forward knowledge so you can plan your time. So it's not that it just gets dumped on you suddenly and out of the blue. So it can be forward planned, and you can think forward and work it out with your line manager or whoever if you're doing it part-time.
Great. And that kind of links to another question, which was someone saying that they're a GP trainee. Is it possible to do genomic medicine less than full-time?
Yeah, in the sense that, the online material, I keep on saying to students, this is not MSc Light. This is a full force MSc. You got to put in the work to get a good grade in the assessment, because the assessments really are testing for your ability to dip into all this material. And those assessments are not things like, multiple choice exams. These are critical appraisals. So we've had a lot of GPs who have successfully done our course. So that's full-time working GPs. But it requires that 1 week commitment per month, and it requires quite a lot of work at home, but they rise to it, and they're smart, and they can do it. So yes, it is entirely feasible to do it.
Great. So there's no more questions in the chat, but if anybody does have any, please feel free to pop them in. I'm just going to look through the ones that were submitted beforehand. Somebody asked about advancing their career in precision medicine and if our course could help with that.
It depends on what you're doing right now, but yes, it certainly helps. We have many groups who are at the cutting edge of genomics and of applying genomic medicine. So as you probably know, oncology is the poster child of genomic medicine. There are so many success stories where personalized diagnostics and then personalized medications have really impacted upon different forms of tumors. But likewise, genomic medicine is really impacting cardiology and respiratory work, and that's where NHLI really comes into its own. So you will find lots and lots of examples within our clinical faculty where it's really being taken on board and applied. So I would say, yes, if you want to have a career in precision medicine, you'll see a lot of places and opportunities if you trained with us.
Lovely. Another person's asked, what is the criteria for accepting an applicant? Does having internships for genetic counselling give an edge in applications? And what exactly is needed for getting accepted?
What is needed for getting accepted is to convince the interviewers. I mean, clearly you have to make the academic grade in terms of what you've done and where you've been. But it's very important, your motivations and the way you present yourself in the interview, and your conception and your understanding of the paper we give you. So we discuss that. We're not going to go into a journal club in an interview. We are going to be asking you to really explain about what the paper's about and whether it holds water or not. So if you're convincing about that, I would say that counts far more. And Emily, please feel free to jump in on this. I think that counts far more than doing internships in genetic counselling, which is great, and it shows an awful lot of motivation. If you wanted to do get into the scientist training program, I think doing those types of internships or doing volunteer work does make a big difference. But it doesn't make that much of a difference in our program. I think it's far more important to academically and motivation-wise be committed. You want to add anything, Emily?
No, I think you covered the most important things. We really are looking in the interview for, if that motivation to kind of be able to critically think and understand the science comes across. Because many people have very impressive applications with lots of different internships and experiences, but the interview is kind of crucial.
Yep.
Yeah. And the last question I have is, what is the required documentation to apply as an international student?
I really don't know. You'd have to ask our admissions people.
Yeah, I think it's generally like an English language test if necessary, but they can help with visa queries as well.
Yeah, they're going to ask it for a transcript of, and they know every academic institution in the world, so they have their sort of equivalence tables about where everything ranks.
That's all the questions I have that were submitted. If anybody else has any questions they'd like to ask, then please feel free. And our staff member Jen has just put in the admissions email into the chat if you do have any queries about applying internationally.
Well, we will continue interviews up until well into August. So if you're planning on applying, do it soon.
If you do have any questions that you think of after this chat, then please feel free to email us, and we can get back to you via email too.
Okay, so thank you very much for joining us and for listening to our spiels. And if you have questions, as Eleanor and Jen have said, please just get in touch. All right, thank you and good luck.